But up first, we are officially kicking off our 2026 election coverage. Today, we're headed to the swingiest of swing states in the United States, Wisconsin. Chris Armstrong is running for the 7th Congressional District as a Democrat. The Democratic primary is next August the 11th, and of course, the election is November 3rd. Hello, Mr. Armstrong. Welcome to The Gailey Show.
Thanks, John. Welcome. Glad to be here.
All right, so to begin with, affordability, cost of living was the major issue that propelled Democrats to victory across the U.S. in November. I'm curious for you and your campaign, what are you hearing from voters in northern Wisconsin, and what are your ideas that you would do in Congress if you were elected as it relates to cost of living?
Well, I mean, certainly, everybody I've been talking to have been, the cost of groceries, cost of electricity, cost of gasoline, other things is just out of control. And this administration, unfortunately, is doing just about everything to make all of those things worse. And so, and then, of course, we've got a big, ag, industry here in Wisconsin. And again, those policies really aren't helping those organizations out either. So, so first of all, I mean, I think, the tariff, regime that's in place is just completely nonsensical. It is just not based on any, common sense economic theory or anything. And so, do tariffs have a use? They do, certainly in very limited cases, but, this is really hurting, the farmers, especially small business. And, having, uncertainty, I think, is a big thing that's really troubling people about, how can I possibly make plans for, my family and my business when, the policies might change, depending on what side of the bed, the president gets out of. The kinds of investments that I think the federal government can help, the 7th District is to, help improve education, job training, increase wages. We've got to be able to, people have to be healthy in order to work, in my opinion. So, the other side seems to think that you have to work to be healthy. That's completely backwards. You have to be both, mentally and physically well in order to do that. And of course, healthcare obviously is a very topical concern of many people, where rates are going to increase significantly for many people across the 7th District. And I am unfortunately not very confident that the Congress is going to figure something out in time. I mean, for goodness sakes, there's a week left of time. Again, why lawmakers go home to leave huge holes of critical legislation and benefits, notwithstanding the 50 plus days that Mike Johnson kept the House of Representatives, out of session. I mean, for goodness sakes, you would think that with that kind of time on their hands, maybe they could have come up with, a good healthcare proposal, but it doesn't look like they use that time in a real positive way.
No, not. We're going to talk about what is on the table, and it's dicey. I know that Jim, our executive producer, would be your constituent if you were elected. So I know he's got a bunch of questions for you. So Jim, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, Chris. Can you give people, when you first registered to run, it was you and Tom Tiffany. That was and so when I saw that, I thought, well, Tom Tiffany's about as smart as a box of rocks. So I'm going with Chris. Well, now the situation has changed. Now we've got 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans. So can you tell us a little bit more about your background that helps distinguish you versus all these other people?
Yep. So, I started the race back in April. And, that was out of basically a sense of, frustration and rage about what was going on in the federal government. Decided that, as the, first flurry of unconstitutional, and illegal executive orders came out, DOJ started taking a sledgehammer to the federal government, that I had to do something because I was going to break something in my house. So I started protesting locally here in my little town of New Richmond in St. Croix County in February, all by myself, walking the crosswalks at the busiest intersection in town at rush hour. And that, led me to want to get engaged with, the April 1st election that was coming up at the time for Supreme Court, where, again, so much money was being thrown into it. Again, Elon doing pretty unscrupulous, probably illegal things, in my opinion, as it relates to the election, but felt that I needed to do more than the bare minimum. So, traditionally over my life, I've been a pretty committed religious voter, up and down, the ballot, all elections, primaries, put up a lawn sign or two, maybe throw some money at a candidate or two once in a while, but, religiously voted. But I'm like, I need to do more for this, this April 1st election. And so got engaged with the local St. Croix County Democrat Party. And started canvassing doors, in preparation for that election. And it was, of course, very encouraging to see the outcome of that, where, all of Wisconsin shifted left, 10 or, 11 points. Right. And, but I thought of, I'm a grandparent for the first time.
Congratulations.
Thanks so much. He's the cutest guy in the whole world, of course. And I thought of, what am I going to tell my grandson, in 10, 11, 12 years when he's a young man? And he says, Grandpa, I heard things are pretty crazy when I was born. What did you do? And I just can't imagine not, looking him in the eye and not being able to say, I did everything within my power to try to make this place a better world, for you and future generations. Right. And so, that compelled me, to get into the race. My background, I've run a IT company, I'm a small business owner for the past 30 plus years, coming to you from the global headquarters in my house in New Richmond, Wisconsin. I grew up on the Apple River, north of Star Prairie. I was just across the county line, went to high school up in Amory. Went to school at UW-Madison, got my degree in astrophysics and mathematics from University of Minnesota, Twin Cities. And, but, I was talking with another, local constituent, if I might be presumptuous, just last week. And, she asked me, the same kind of question, why are you running? And I'm like, well, I'm nobody. I'm anybody. I'm just a guy, right. I've lived here, most of my life. I think this is one of the most beautiful, areas of the world, and, feel privileged to be able to grow up here. And as, a part of trying to, affect change, after the April 1st election, decided, hey, I think it was the Hands Off or No Cuts rally was coming up with Indivisible on April 5th, decided to register, an event here in New Richmond. And 4 days later, we had 95 people signed up and 250 people showed up. And then that caused me to say, we need a local presence of Indivisible here in New Richmond. So I started Indivisible New Richmond with a co-host, and have since had to step away from a leadership position because being in a political office. But in the protest that we had on October 18th, I think that was. The last big national, and we had 350 people show up. And what was compelling is, we actually had Republicans and independents show up. And there are a lot of people out there that are really upset with what's going on. It's not just me, with the erratic policies of this administration. And again, how they just don't seem to be doing anything to fundamentally, make things better for people. And so, I just feel like I'm a guy who can stand up for the regular working class people of the 7th District, represent them and the interest of working families and their businesses.
Let me ask a question about 7th District, because when I look at that map, it is vast and it is sort of unfocused in my mind. Strategically, I look at it and think, well, where's the center of that, and what represents Wisconsin 7? Is there a town? Is there a focal point? Or is it really like a stained glass
There's a
window.
lot of diversity, So one thing, the 7th district is the location of 7 of Wisconsin's federally recognized Native American tribes.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a lot of that historical diversity to celebrate and protect.
Mm-hmm.
Where I live in St. Croix County in the southwest section of the district, Hudson and New Richmond, kind of suburbs of Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Yep.
Then we go all the way north to the South Shore of Lake Superior. So Superior, Ashland, Bayfield, that's kind of a different, ecosystem up there. The big, the Chewagamon forest in the middle, Wausau, Medford, Merrill, Eagle River, Toma, except not including Toma because it goes around, Chippewa Falls, except not including Chippewa Falls. So it's a very large landmass, 26 of Wisconsin's 72 counties, larger than the country of Denmark.
Yeah.
So, it is a pretty large, district.
It is.
With a lot of different diverse viewpoints. But I think, growing up here, I think at least I'd like to believe that we can all agree on some common values of, fairness, decency, and compassion.
Well, and let's start with honesty. I mean, I think that's been in short supply. So let's do that. I see John's giving me the hand signal, so I'm gonna let him take it from now.
Well, I feel like we are coming up at our time here, so I'm very appreciative, Mr. Armstrong, for your taking the time to come with us, begin to tell us about your campaign. I have a feeling we're only beginning to start the conversation here. There's a lot of time between now and next August, so I hope you'll do us the honor of coming back to talk more about the issues as we get into 2026.
I would eagerly welcome the opportunity to come back, guys.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Chris's website is armstrongforwisconsin.com. That's armstrongforwisconsin.com. You can follow him on Blue Sky and on Facebook. Just search for his name and candidacy. We're going to take a break here. Before we do, if you like what we're doing on YouTube, please click subscribe. Leave us a comment. Tell us how you liking the Gailey Show here on AM 950 KTNF and WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.